Let's talk about early introduction of allergenic foods.
All right, good topic. This is something that comes up all the time. And it's interesting because a few years ago, as you guys are aware, the recommendations changed dramatically in terms of how and when to introduce foods to kids. So several years ago, it was recommended that we would not introduce foods that are highly allergenic to kids at risk for allergies, because it was thought maybe you could get them through a period where they would develop allergies. Well, it turns out that was advice that didn't really pan out properly, because the development of food allergies continued to rise. The incidence of food allergies continued to rise over time. And there was a pretty important study called the LEAP study that came out several years ago that showed us that introducing allergenic foods earlier to kids at risk for allergies dramatically decreases the likelihood of them developing those food allergies.
So what foods would you introduce early, and when would you introduce them?
So the thing that comes up the most is peanut, because that was the food that was in the study. So I think the easiest thing to talk about is to talk a little bit about that study first. So it was the LEAP study, learning early about peanut, and that came from an observation that kids of Jewish ancestry in the UK had a high amount of peanut allergy, but kids in Israel with a similar background didn't. And the observation was made that in Israel, these kids eat bamba, which is a snack made from peanut, as babies. And then they got thinking, well, maybe giving these kids peanut had something to do with it. So they did this study, and they came out with the recommendations that said kids at risk for peanut allergy should be tested for peanut and then introduced peanut if they can. So the recommendation is to test a kid for peanut if they have egg allergy or if they have moderate to severe eczema. So that's a recommendation, not really talking about very mild eczema, but kids with moderate to severe eczema or egg allergy should be tested for peanut. And that test, if we do a skin test, will provide one of three options. And I tell parents it's either negative, in which case we say go home and introduce peanut, and we tell them how to do that. Positive, in which case we say this kid's probably allergic to peanut, we'll treat this kid as though they were allergic to peanut. Or in the middle. And if they're in the middle, we do what's called a food challenge. They come to an allergist's office, we administer peanut in our office safely, because it's very important to get peanut in the diet. If we're dealing with a peanut allergy, we would also test the kid for other nuts at that time. And really the emphasis is on getting these allergenic foods in the diets as soon as possible.
So let's say I've tried peanut with my child. How often do I have to give it?
So that's a very important question, because it's not a one and done. So once these kids are able to have peanut, we want them to continue to have peanut in their diet with some regularity. And I'd say at least a couple times a week to maintain that tolerance. So that's very important.
Can you tell us how you recommend introducing peanut? Let's
Yes.
say we don't have a high-risk kid, so our usual parents, and we want to do peanut introduction early. What would you recommend?
So a few things. So in the study, they either used bamba, which is that peanut snack, and since the study has become pretty popular, you can get it at stores, you can get it online. And
there's a Trader Joe version as well.
There's a Trader Joe version. I haven't tried it, but I hear it's quite good. So you can use the bamba or the Trader Joe's version, or you can use peanut powder, or you can use peanut butter. And what I would recommend for peanut butter is you don't want to just give the kid peanut butter, because that's a choking hazard. You certainly don't want to give the kid peanuts. So you would take a thin, creamy peanut butter. And I usually favor one of the more traditional store-bought creamy peanut butters like Skippy or Jif, because they're very smooth. You want to dilute it with a equal amount of warm water. Makes kind of a thin peanut liquid mixture, and you can mix that with something the child is already eating, like a cereal or a fruit puree that you know they're not allergic to, and just try a little bit of it. Maybe a little bit on day 1, a little bit more on day 2, day 3, and day 4.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And you can do the same with other allergenic foods?
You can do the same with other foods. So if they tolerate peanut, you can introduce almond butter, you can introduce Nutella, which has some hazelnut in it. And if you wanted to do more, you could also introduce with other nut powders or flours. But again, we're talking about a kid who doesn't have any other history of allergy. If the child has eczema or has an egg allergy, it'd be important to consult with an allergist or you guys and make some recommendations on that.
Absolutely. Thank you. That was so helpful.
Absolutely.